meeting to order. It is 11:30.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Let me click the box that I got it, that we are recording. You'll probably all get the same invitation. But good morning again. We'd like to welcome everyone to the MAG Regional Council meeting for August the 25th. This is a virtual meeting, and then we are now called to order. As a reminder, please remember to unmute your device before speaking and to mute when you are not speaking to create a positive experience for all of our attendees. Phone participants should use *6 to mute and unmute and *9 to raise your hand. The first item on our agenda is the call to the audience. Members of the public were asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted starting time for this meeting.
Mayor Giles, before we do that, can we do a quick roll call just to confirm we have a quorum?
Oh, thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. Is it Melissa? Do you want to take us through the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the MAG Regional Council. I'll call your name. Please unmute and indicate if you're present. Mayor Barney.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Wilner. President Burnett.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Carlett.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Carlett. Jen Daniels.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Here.
Thank you. President Javier. Mayor Hermosillo.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault.
Yes, Melissa, I'm here.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Lord.
Present.
Thank you. Jackie Meck.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Molina. Mayor Osborne. Mayor Ortega.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson. Mayor Price. Mayor Riggs. Mayor Rodriguez.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Wires.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Woods. And our chair is present. Is there anyone that I missed?
Mayor Osborne is present.
Thank you, Mayor Osborne.
And Mayor
A
Wilner.
quorum is present. Thank you, Mayor Van Wilner.
Thank
A quorum is present.
Mayor Price is here as well.
Great. Melissa, did you get Mayor Price?
I did. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So we do have a quorum present, and we'll return to the agenda. We are on agenda item 2. This is the call to the audience. MAG staff, have we received any public comments? And if so, would you please read them at this time?
Thank you, Chair and members of the Regional Council. We did not receive any items for the call to the audience or for any other item on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on with the agenda then. Our next item is the Executive Director's Report. MAG Executive Director Eric Anderson will give this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we can go to the next slide. 3 things for you this morning. First of all, Mayor Giles and Mayor Gallego and some others attended a press conference with Secretary of Transportation Buttigieg in July. The one thing I do want to mention that he did was very impressed about the progress that the Valley's made since he was here last in 2004. And in particular, I think he really commended us on our regional cooperation in being able to get as much done as we have. So once again, it's a testament to you all coming together and making sure that we continue to move the region forward. So it's recognized by by others who come into this region and are impressed with our regional cooperation. So go to the next slide. Late in July, we held our annual crossing guard training. We have typically we have 300, 400, or 500 crossing guards trained every year in terms of the latest thinking in terms of how do we keep our children safe as they go back to school. This year, we also included some customized video demonstrations and some other unique features. This program has actually been going on for almost 50 years now. It was actually started by the city of Phoenix, and MAG took this over a number of years ago. Something that we're very proud of. So this year we trained 320 crossing guards in the valley. We go to the next slide. We also had a press conference in July, also recognizing the $50,000 contribution from the Arizona Lottery to MAG's Heat Relief Network. That translated into over 300 bottles of bottled water to help those who are out in the heat. So a very important partnership, and hopefully this will lead to future partnerships between MAG and the Arizona Lottery. So great attendance and great press coverage also. Shout out to our communications team for making sure that that happened, and really well attended. So thank you for that. Mr. Chair, that completes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. Council, if you have any questions regarding any of this, would certainly invite you to reach out to Eric after the meeting with those questions. Next item on our agenda for this meeting is the approval of the consent agenda. Items 4A through 4I are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the Regional Council have questions or request a presentation on any of these items? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Kevin
Mayor
Harkey,
Giles,
so move.
this is Mayor Carlett. I will second.
Thank you. We have Mayor Hartke made the motion, seconded by Mayor Carlett to approve the consent agenda. Melissa, would you please take a roll call?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council. I will call your name. Please indicate how you vote for the record. Mayor Barney.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bienwellner.
Aye.
Thank you. President Burnett.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Carlett.
Yes.
Thank you. Jen Daniels.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you. Supervisor Goodman. Mayor Hall.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo.
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Lord.
Yes.
Thank you. Jackie Meck.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Molina. Mayor Osborne.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson. Mayor Price.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Riggs. Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wires.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Woods. And Mr. Chair, how do you vote?
Vote aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? That motion carries.
All right, thank you very much. Moving on, item 5 on our agenda is a resolution of support for Second Responder Appreciation Day. MAG Human Services Director Kelly Williams will introduce this item. And Kelly, I can't help but say welcome to MAG. I think this is is this your first or fifth day on the job, so we appreciate you being thrown into the lion's den like this, but welcome to MAG.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I am very excited to join MAG. I've worked in public health for almost 20 years and am born and raised in Mesa, and thankful to be serving my county in this way, and really look forward to getting to know you all.
I didn't know that, Kelly, but I could tell I liked you right off the bat. So now that all makes perfect sense.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would now like to introduce two of our colleagues to present this resolution to the board. Jason Matthews is the Vice President of Community Development and Engagement and Vice Chair of Maricopa Association of Governments Human Services Technical Committee. And he's the Vice President of Community Development Engagement with Valley of the Sun United Way. And Christina Patanescu, I'm so sorry I butchered that, even though I practiced, works in grants and neighborhood services as a supervisor in Goodyear. I'd like to welcome my colleagues today to present this resolution to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So just as Goodyear was making its debut, or just as COVID was making its debut in Arizona, the Human Services Technical Committee was preparing to do an analysis of each of our participating municipalities' community assessments with the intent to identify common threads or regional trends. Unfortunately, although we had a great facilitation method we were prepared to use, it required in-person meetings and the lockdown struck. So as human services staff throughout the region worked tirelessly to meet the growing needs of our community's most vulnerable and the increasing size of that vulnerable population itself, the Human Services Technical Committee pivoted to share best practices and include regular discussion of what good things came about as a consequence of the pandemic response and how that had contributed to our work in human services. Our hope was to be able to thank you, the policymakers, for allowing us the flexibility to be adaptable and to provide some feedback on some of the ways that our abilities to do the work has improved through COVID. In many ways, service delivery became more effective. For example, the use of technology, expanded or extended hours, and in many cases that was afforded by telecommuting or decentralized staffing. Also, collaborative problem solving really took hold. We had new partnerships that were formed, and there was a great deal of innovation in contracting methods. Barriers were removed, though some persisted, and it really reinforced the importance of trust, personal contact and relationships, not just between government providers and residents, but also among organizations. And there were valuable efficiencies that came about as a consequence of sharing that data and centralized or consolidated reporting. Another positive was the attention on community health. Certainly hand washing, for example, is something that everyone should be diligent about, COVID or no COVID. But we also have a new appreciation for the fragility of our mental health and the need for social connectivity. Through it all, Human Services Technical Committee acknowledges the importance and impact of intentional positive communication that also really was a part of the overall pandemic response. And so in that spirit, we are really proud to introduce the concept of celebrating and thanking those quiet heroes, human service providers and their staff members who have been on COVID-19 watch for a pretty long time now. And I'm going to turn it over to Jason to share a little bit more about the specifics.
Thank you so much, Christina. Mr. Chairman and members of the council, I'm just thrilled to be here to talk about this Second Responder Appreciation Day. We see this as an opportunity to really thank and honor those individuals that provide support to all of us that are going through not only the crisis of this pandemic, but all crises. And again, these are the individuals that are working in to help people access safe shelter, employment, emergency food, meals, counseling. They really actually help our first responders, after those individuals show up and help with that immediate emergency. It's these second responders that really help to kind of rebuild and work together with those social service organizations, nonprofits, other government entities to really help them kind of get their lives back together. And we're just thrilled to have this opportunity to present this for consideration today. Very quickly, this really originated from the Human Services Technical Committee as a way of honoring these individuals, as Christina had mentioned. And we also were able to receive feedback from the Community Initiatives Committee, which was great and able to allow us to think through this, as well as provide some feedback with their respective communities as well. We were able to develop a toolkit that provides some sample social media posts, proclamations, just ways to celebrate these second responders that every community can make their own, and we're really excited about that. And what we're asking for today, following this consideration of this resolution, is to share this information back with your public information teams, maybe your human service departments, and consider doing a post on September 1st to thank those second responders that are maybe in your nonprofit communities, maybe they're in your government offices, those folks that are in your community, and just giving them just a little bit of a pat on the back virtually, maybe doing a resolution or a proclamation in your own community would be swell, but just a way of just honoring and thanking those individuals. And before asking to turn over any questions, we also just want to really thank the MAG staff for really helping to put this together, as we couldn't do this without them. So with that, turn it over for any questions from this council that might have regarding this day of second recognition.
Through the chair, Kevin Hartke.
Yes, Mayor Hartke.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to thank MAG for this and the toolkit. I know we're going to be utilizing several of the suggestions and items mentioned and working through one of our collaborative nonprofits for our city, Chandler, to recognize the second responders in our community that work directly and indirectly with our city. So I do want to thank the emphasis and the tool and MAG for the toolkit in this case.
Thank you too. If I could add on to what Mayor Harkey said for the town of Fountain Hills, we appreciated MAG and everybody sending us the information. And we actually did the proclamation on the 17th because we won't be meeting again till after the event. We particularly wanted to point out that we have a Fountain Hills Care group that goes in after other tragedies or crimes or things happen, and they help our folks. And also, again, to recognize the home delivered meals and the people working on homelessness and everything else that goes on in our community. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mayor Dickey. Other comments or questions on this item?
Chair Giles, this is Mayor Bridget Peterson. I wanted to follow up with Mayor Hartke and Mayor Dickey. Gilbert presented to the Ascend group at our last council meeting because we too will not be meeting again until after September 1st. And I've already used some of the information that was sent to us from MAG for social media posts and appreciate the opportunity to recognize these folks and all of the hard work that they've done, especially through this pandemic and everything that we've seen over the last 18 months. So thank you very much to MAG and the group for putting this together for us.
Thank you, Mayor Peterson. Anyone else like to weigh in on this?
Yes, Georgia Lord, Mayor Lord.
Mayor Lord.
I want Christina to thank that team. Great job. We did present the proclamation. I think the information is extremely helpful. So thank you for all the hard work.
Great. Thank you. Anyone else like to be heard on this? Well, thanks again for that great report. Thanks for raising, the awareness for all of us on the importance of second responders. And I'm sure, obviously, many cities have already taken advantage of this suggestion to have their own proclamations. But currently, so we have this item on our agenda for approval. This is a resolution supporting September the 1st, 2021 as Second Responders Day. Is there a motion to support that?
So moved.
Second, Bridget Peterson.
Thank you very much. Mayor Lord has the motion and Mayor Peterson has the second. Melissa, will you please do the roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council. I'll call your name. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Barney?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bienwilder?
Aye.
Thank you. President Burnett?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Carlett?
Aye.
Thank you. Jen Daniels?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hall?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Harkey?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Hermosillo?
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor LaVault?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Lord?
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie Mack?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Pereira?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson? Mayor Price?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez? Mayor Schoaf?
Aye.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith? Mayor Wires?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Woods?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how do you vote?
Chair votes aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? That motion carries unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much. Moving on, agenda item 6 has to do with our efforts to address wrong way detection, specifically the Loop 101 at Glendale Avenue and Grand Avenue and Loop 202 at the I-10 32nd Street. The proposal is to revise the scope of this project. MAG Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor Patrick Stone will introduce this item. Patrick.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of Regional Council. Thank you so much. This item is on your agenda for possible action, and I'll be presenting today's item along with Ms. Susan Anderson, Systems Technology Group Manager with the Arizona Department of Transportation. Next slide, please. I'd like to start by providing a brief overview of the MAG federal fund programming guidelines that inform this action. The guidelines were approved by Regional Council back in June of 2015, and the guidelines state that a modification to a project scope requires the request to start at the modal committee and work through the committee process, culminating at Regional Council. This request is part of a larger wrong-way detection project, and MAG staff and ADOT will be providing an update on that effort later this fall. Next slide, please. So I'm going to real quick provide a little bit of a project background to orient the project. This project came out of the Systems Management and Operations Plan that was approved by Regional Council back in August of 2018. It was part of the non-competitive project overview under the category of integrated corridor management. And the specific scope for the current project is installing thermal cameras at freeway off-ramps along 2 corridors. The locations listed are Loop 101 between Glendale Avenue and Grand Avenue, and then again, Loop 202 between I-10 and 32nd Street. These locations were selected based on the number of incidents, which included collisions, contact with DPS, and 911 calls. And this project was part of a call for projects that was held in spring of 2019 and ultimately approved by Regional Council in June 2019. Next slide, please. And quickly, I just wanted to orient the council where the projects exist. As we said, with the scope, installing the thermal cameras on existing signal equipment. And you can see on the map where these 2 projects are located. At this point in time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ms. Anderson, who will provide the technical overview of the project and the requested scope change. Susan?
Thank you, Patrick. And good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the council. I'm Susan Anderson with ADOT, and I am glad to be here today to present a little bit more on our wrong way detection project. As Patrick noted, this project is to install thermal cameras on existing signal equipment. And the two locations that were identified are along Loop 101 and several interchanges along Loop 202. These sites were chosen mainly because they had the highest number of wrong-way incidents, and we had plenty of data supporting that these were areas of concern. Next slide, please. This slide is presented to show just the components that are involved with the I-17 wrong-way detection pilot project. That is the 15-mile project. The project on I-17 was 15 miles long between I-10 and Loop 101, and it involved all of these components, including the thermal cameras at the interchange. You'll notice that there was one at the interchange at the crossroad. There was another thermal camera placed along the main line for detection. These are to identify when wrong-way vehicles actually enter the ramp and when they enter the main line of the freeway. The pilot also contained a number of other components, the illuminated wrong-way sign, use of our DMS boards, and CCTV cameras. However, the project that I'm presenting today is really just on the installation of additional thermal cameras for detection. The key locations for placing thermal cameras are where we actually have existing power and communication. Thus, most of our design for placing thermal cameras is on existing signal equipment. Next slide, please. One of the challenges we have is with the corridors that we've identified as our two locations, ADOT is not actually the jurisdiction over those traffic signals. So it creates a little bit of a challenge of installing thermal detection on signal poles that are not within our jurisdiction. So ADOT has taken a step back to look at where do we have jurisdiction and do have locations of power and communication with very sturdy, stable devices. We have identified that we do have DMS locations all along the Loop 101 corridor, and thus that is our request today. We would like to revise the project scope to install wrong-way thermal cameras along the entire Loop 101 corridor. That will allow ADOT to install detection at approximately 20 DMS locations and achieve mainline coverage. The project implementation would occur over 18 months. This actually coincides very well with the Loop 101 mobility project. We're looking at about 6 to 9 months for the procurement of the equipment and then 6 to 9 months for installation, which we would do with an existing contract and our in-house staff. The project itself is not requesting any change in budget. We will use the existing programmed amount of $350,000 of CMAQ. However, we are requesting a deferment of that to fiscal year 22 for the funding. Depending on how this project comes out, we anticipate it to go very well and smoothly. ADOT will likely make a request in the future to extend the limits on the next project in this set to cover the Loop 202 freeway. Next slide, please. Here we're providing just a graphic so you have a visual reference for what we're talking about. We would use our DMS boards that are within the freeway and ideally locate 2 thermal cameras on each DMS board. The cost for doing this is approximately $18,000 per location, and we would do this at 20 sites along Loop 101. The next slide, please. Here we are proposing the entire Loop 101 corridor. It's a full 61 miles, and that would be our revised project location. So we will achieve mainline detection with this revised project scope. Slide, please. With this, we continue to do project reporting on the basis of safety. ADOT continues to coordinate with DPS for our statewide wrong-way detection data. We track the number of incursions and events that occur and how of course, the crash metrics. All of these metrics are tracked in a database and reported to ADOT management on a monthly basis. And we are preparing to report to MAG as well and working with staff to get that presentation ready. With that, I believe I hand this back over to Patrick with the next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Great presentation. Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council, the action requested today is to approve the project scope modification request for ADOT's wrong way detection, Loop 101, Glendale Avenue to Grand Avenue, and Loop 202, I-10 to 32nd Street. MAG tip ID DOT 21-813 in accordance with the enclosed tip amendment request. Next slide. Mr. Chair, members of the Regional Council, that concludes our presentation. Myself and Susan would be available for any questions the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick and Susan. Council, do you have questions on this agenda item?
Mr. Chair, this is Tom Schoaf.
Yes, Mayor Schoaf.
Thank you. I have a question / observation. Last time this came before the council, there were a number of regional council members that were interested in not merely detecting a wrong way driver, but also coming up with strategies to actually stop the wrong way driver. And I'm curious if there's been any progress made by ADOT in looking at strategies to stop these drivers. So that's the question. And then the observation I have is that I'm curious about the technology that ADOT decided upon for these cameras, that is so that it has to be tied to a place that has power and connectivity. We just put a system into our small little city that I think it has 15 or more cameras. The cost was less than $80,000 for all the cameras. The cameras are solar powered and they're web connected, so they could be placed anywhere we wanted them. And I'm curious if ADOT, in looking at this program, has actually looked to the best technology for these cameras. So those are my two observations / questions. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman Giles, Mayor Schoaf, thank you so much for both the observations and the questions. Susan, I don't know if you wanted to perhaps tackle the second question first, talking about the technology, and then we can come back to the first question.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Schultz. Good observations, and we are always interested in understanding what other technology is in use. ADOT did make the decision to go with the thermal cameras based off of a couple years of research that was done several years ago. We are continuing to keep our options open and looking at future opportunities. However, we do know that the thermal cameras that we have chosen to go with are the ones that do work well within our existing decision support system, and that is what actually relays the information back to our traffic operations center. So we do have a few criteria that the cameras we choose needs to meet, and these we have found do function within that those parameters. The second part of your question was about the stopping of wrong way vehicles. We do have, ADOT is undergoing a current research project identifying various opportunities and devices or the systems that are available out there to address that type of issue. And I do know that the research group is planning on finalizing that study probably by the end of this year. So we are all interested in seeing how that the results of that study come out, but that is underway right now.
Thank you, Susan, Mayor Giles, Mayor Schoaf. The intent then would be to come back to this committee or this council at a later date to hopefully provide an update on the wrong way system and how that's functioning.
Okay. Thank you. Council, other questions on this item? All right, hearing none, this item again is on the agenda for approval of the project scope modification request for ADOT's wrong way drive detection program and to revise the ADOT wrong way detection project in accordance with the enclosed tip amendment request. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved, Mayor Pereira.
I'm sorry, thank you. Is it Mayor?
Mayor Pereira, Wickenburg.
Thank you, Mayor Pereira. Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second, Kevin Hartke.
Thank you, Mayor Hartke. We have a motion and a second. Melissa, would you please do the roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Regional Council, I'll call your name. Please unmute and indicate how you vote. Mayor Barney?
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bien Wilner?
Aye.
Thank you. President Burnett.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Carlett.
Yes.
Thank you. Jen Daniels.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Dickey.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Gallego.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hall.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Hartke.
Yes.
Thank you. Supervisor Hickman. Mayor LaVault.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Lord.
Aye.
Thank you. Jackie Mack.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Osborne.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Ortega. Mayor Pereira.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Bridget Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Les Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Price.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Schoaf.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor Wires.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Weiss.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Aye.
Thank you. Mayor Woods.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? That motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Moving on in the agenda, item 7 is the results of the Proposition 400 performance audit. MAG Transportation Performance Program Manager Ted Brown will provide a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good day. Next slide, please. A little context. This audit is a legislative requirement embedded in statute. Every 5 years, auditors meet with MAG and our partners to review expenditures from the previous 5 years and examine the performance of the system in relieving congestion and improving mobility. This is our third audit, the last two being completed in 2010 and 2016. Next slide. This is a collaborative effort between MAG, ADOT, and Valley Metro, collectively referred to as the RTP partners, that began in October 2020 with an entrance meeting and some initial data requests. The next 6 months or so consisted of a series of interviews with the appropriate subject matter experts at each organization. The auditors also requested a wide array of additional materials, everything from technical methodological documentation to meeting minutes from MAG's various committees to reports and studies that have been produced over the last 5 years. The audit officially wrapped up on July 1st when the report was released by the Arizona Auditor General. A little additional context, in 2010, the audit had 27 findings and recommendations. In 2016, the audit had 12, but I'm very, very pleased to announce that this audit has no findings or recommendations. To quote the auditors directly, next slide, please. MAG and its RTP partners delivered Prop 400 projects as promised and realized many accomplishments in accordance with revised plans vetted by the appropriate decision makers. This audit highlights MAG's continued commitment to excellence in program management and our stewardship of public funding. The auditors were especially complimentary of the professionalism and cooperative spirit shown by MAG and its partners. These results are something we should be extremely proud of, especially as we endeavor towards enabling legislation. Next slide. With no findings or recommendations, no public meeting is required and no committee or board action is necessary, making this item for information and discussion only. Next slide. Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation and I'm available for any questions.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add a few comments to Ted's presentation. This is really, this is my 6th audit. I was involved with 3 audits under Prop 300 and the 3 audits in Prop 400. And as Ted said, there's no findings or recommendations in this one. And, I just want to emphasize, going into the extension discussions with the legislature and certainly with the public, I think we've demonstrated a high degree of effectiveness relative to managing the Prop 400 program. So once again, I think the auditors were very diligent, went through a lot of our projects. And once again, I think it's a testament to our RTP partners, ADOT, Valley Metro, and MAG, and our member agencies who have an important responsibility for implementing the arterial street program. So I want to thank you all for your diligence and support for the agency. Once again, I think this sets the table very nicely for the extension discussions that we're now coming up again. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Ted. Obviously, this very timely topic. We're as we go out and encourage and talk about extending Prop 400. I think it's great to come with a clean bill of health and a good report card to report back to the public that we've been good stewards of the money they've trusted us with so far. So thank you for that good report. Council, any questions you might have on this topic? Hearing none, again, this item is on the agenda for information only, so no action is necessary. The next item on our agenda is the expiration of the eviction moratorium. Current trends and resources. MAG Deputy Executive Director Amy St. Peter will introduce this item. Amy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the council, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. The purpose of our presentation is to discuss the moratorium, which is still in place, thankfully, for a bit more time. Also, to be able to share with you the latest trends as well as resources available. This is, of course, a huge crisis throughout all of our communities and our region, and extending throughout the rest of the country. We were able to provide some updated information that is available on the MAG website. On the MAG website, you can view the data that lists the number of eviction filings by community by month, current as of July 2021. We are tracking all of this data very carefully, very closely. One, to make sure that people are able to receive assistance, and two, to make sure that the latest data is informing our efforts to develop a stronger regional response to homelessness. We're, of course, very concerned that people may lose their homes when the moratorium is eventually lifted. So it's my pleasure now to introduce TJ Reed to you. He is one of our newest team members. You previously met Kelly Williams, who's our newest team member in Human Services. Very excited to have great new staff joining us. TJ in particular brings a wealth of expertise in data analysis, public policy, and human services. TJ, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amy. Mr. Chair and members of the council, next slide, please. So what we'll be going over today is a review of some of the data that is available. And I want to point out specifically that this data is really focused on residential tenants and not commercial tenants. This PowerPoint will focus really on at-risk populations and data, whereas the data that Amy referenced as a part of the calendar invite will actually show what is happening through court filings. Next slide, please. So the data that we have put together on one slide for you here is a slew of different points. So we had worked with ASU, the Arizona State University worked with us to identify several factors through census data and the expenditure of emergency rental assistance the first time and the second time to really project out how many renters would be evicted when the moratorium is lifted. They projected just under 20% of all renters, which, just to put into perspective, of roughly around 400,000 renters, we are talking about 80,000. Zillow talks about having 16% renters at risk. And if you're unfamiliar with Zillow, it is an application that focuses on rentals and home purchasing. The census also produces a pulse survey that they have been since the beginning of the of COVID-19 outbreaks, that they are requesting data from each community every couple of weeks to keep people up to date so that municipal leaders and government officials can make timely decisions based on the most up-to-date data. And they project that over 20% of people are at high risk of eviction based on the survey responses. Lastly, the Arizona Multi-Housing Association projects less than 5% of evictions based on what they're hearing from their landlords. They're also advising landlords to work with residents and really be flexible in this space, because after talking with those at the justice courts, it is really up to landlords how impactful this will be. Next slide, please. As you'll see here, data sources vary, right? And so what we can all agree upon is that there are many people who are actually at risk and in a vulnerable position. People vary on their projections of how impactful that will be, but we know a lot of people are at least at risk. As I mentioned, the justice courts would say it is really dependent on the actions of landlords to how impactful and how many people are evicted. So there is a lot of variability here, but there is action that can be taken and has been taken over the last little bit here. And many of you obviously have done multiple actions and steps on your own over the last little bit. And so what we'll talk about now is the moratorium, and then we'll go into some of the regional tactics that we're discussing with many of you in offline meetings. So next slide, please. So when we initially were putting this item on the agenda, it was under the assumption that the eviction moratorium would end. This was extended at the beginning of August, as you're all aware, and it was slightly reduced in its scope, in that it is only applicable to communities with high transmission rates of COVID. However, all counties within the state fall under this, including Maricopa and Pinal counties. Next slide, please. And so I wanted to give some examples of things that we are working with many of you on currently, in addition to many of the efforts that have already gone on. I won't call out all of the efforts that have happened up to this point because there's countless good work being done across our region, but some of the things that we're talking about as a part of our regional strategies is what legal diversion and community court, where people can avoid having to go through those systems because there is representation or access to resources prior to that. And even if they go through the court systems, that there is opportunities for them to resolve issues without having to pay fines or go into jails. There are examples in our communities now where social services are being located in the courts, and that has been effective in providing that sort of diversion from going through the system because they're able to connect with resources available. And we're working with several folks on new tools to increase efficiencies of rental assistance. And lastly, to identify many people who are eligible for services and support, we're talking about different levels of coordination and communication within the school system. Next slide. This is the point where we really just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of several resources that are out there, and I'll quickly go through these. Vitalist Health Foundation and Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust funded and are working with legal experts around a tool called AZ Eviction Help. You can go to this website and it can process you through resources that are available and legal support. And for those interested in pushing that information out to their communities, we have linked here a social media toolkit and some other opportunities that you can utilize to get that information out. We would encourage anybody and all people who are struggling to call 211 or visit the website, as it does go through many different resources that can be supportive in a time of struggle. There is also a lot of coverage over at the Arizona Republic. We linked a couple of articles here that really go more in depth. We don't have a lot of time, obviously, in this presentation to talk through everything. So we wanted to make sure there was at least opportunities where you could go to find more of that information. And lastly, we have a tool that many of you are familiar with or have used already, but it is the Hand Up tool. Next slide, please. And what it does is it overlays information related to census information, homelessness, or at-risk data around evictions, and pairing that with some of the services. So this is what the tool looks like. And if you are interested in exploring this further to examine your local area, some of the needs that you may have and the available resources, please reach out to myself or Amy to get that link and the password if you don't already have it. And we can also meet with you to discuss those items if you would prefer. Next slide, please. And with that, here's my contact information as well as Amy's. So if there are questions or concerns that come up after this, you are more than welcome to reach out to us. And with that, I'll give it back to Amy St. Peter.
Great. Thank you so much, TJ. Thank you, Mayor and Council, again for this opportunity. We're very eager to have any direction or questions that you might have on this critical issue. It's critical to align this regional work with your local priorities to ensure that we're meeting your needs in the best way possible. Keeping in mind that every community is different, communities have varying levels of need as well as varying levels of access to resources. And so we want to make sure that we're making a difference in all of your communities by working closely with you and with your staff. We do want to thank you. You've been very generous with your time and with the time of your staff in these regional efforts. The Regional Homeless Coordination Team has been meeting over the summer. A seat at the table is open to every single member agency, and many of you have been sending people. We've had between 40 to 50 people at every meeting. So thank you for that investment of time. Their feedback is critical. We are starting to prioritize the list of action steps that we can take as a region, that local and tribal governments can take, with a lot of support from nonprofit partners, the business community, and the faith community, just to name a few. So again, thank you very much for your investment of time. We look forward to sharing that list of action steps with you and building an action plan together that will strengthen the infrastructure available to address homelessness throughout the region. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Back to you. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Amy and TJ, for that great report. Council, do you have questions for these folks on this topic?
Mr. Chair, it's Ken Weiss.
Mayor Weiss.
Amy, a couple questions for you. One is, as the moratorium on a federal level has been extended, the Supreme Court, while not ruling that it's unconstitutional, has taken a stand on this. And one of the reasons they didn't rule on it fully was because the moratorium was going to expire and they decided not to rule on it right now. How is MAG navigating that sticky issue with an administration that extended the moratorium, understanding that it was probably going to be ruled unconstitutional in our efforts? And the second thing is, when we look at landlords who are providing housing to low-income residents, and those residents may have a difficulty paying rent, why wouldn't the landlord at this point, especially in a hot market in the Phoenix metro area, sell that property, which diminishes the amount of affordable housing in the area? How are we mitigating those issues? What is our dialogue with landlords?
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, Mayor Weiss, and members of the council, thank you very much for those questions. In regard to the first question around how do we navigate kind of sensitive political issues when we don't necessarily have alignment between one branch of government and the other, we are continuing to monitor those latest developments and to make and to bring updates to you as those are available. We are not advocating in any one direction. Any kind of policy position would be set by you, and we're happy to pursue any direction that you might want to guide us in. In regard to your second question, you're absolutely right. A lot of landlords, even when they're being made whole, are not always keeping the current renter in. They are choosing to sell that property. It is a very hot market, as you stated, and they can benefit from the sale of that house. We're seeing some really good efforts underway throughout the region to encourage landlords to continue renting. So for example, Maricopa County has just started a landlord engagement initiative that is really reaching out broadly. Also want to recognize Mayor Giles for sending a letter to the Arizona Multi-Housing Association on behalf of the Regional Council. Actions like that really do support landlords who are trying to assist people and serve them and keep them in their homes. And so there are some very good resources in place. We do want to make sure that as we're caring for the tenants, we're also acknowledging the needs of the landlords as well, and their need to be able to pay their own mortgage, for example, and to be able to pay their bills. And so there are different funding sources in place to be able to help the landlords they have incentives to continue renting in this market when they really could make choices otherwise. And so we want to acknowledge the needs in the business community as well as the people needing assistance, and work regionally together to provide support to those who are taking some really, really good actions in this space.
Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council, other questions on this topic? All right, well, I just want to add my personal thanks again to Amy and to MAG for the regional efforts that we're seeing on this topic. I know it is very sobering, actually terrifying, to hear these projections as to what potentially we're going to see, the eviction numbers we're going to see when the moratorium is lifted. Even if you take the rosiest of those projections, I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of additional evictions. And so I know that my community, and I know I speak for everyone on this phone, we're all doing what we can to mitigate that right now. So I just want to as been said, MAG has really tried to take this to a regional level and add additional resources, and that's been greatly appreciated by my community. But in spite of all of our best efforts, I'm sure we're all very nervous on this topic. It could be quite a catastrophe. All right, well, thank you again. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving forward, item 9 is our legislative update. MAG Policy and Government Relations Director Nathan Pryor will give this report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Regional Council. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to focus our presentation on the recently passed Senate infrastructure bill, also known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. An important note when I cover some of the provisions, this combines surface transportation reauthorization with additional funding provisions, and I'm going to walk through that. You might have seen in the news of late, there's been a lot of wrangling in the House regarding some procedures. House is targeting a deadline of September 27 to bring the infrastructure bill to a vote. Of note in this is not the larger proposed $3.5 trillion budget bill. Those provisions are still pending, have been subject of all these procedural moves in the past week or so in the House. But important note, and really going back to Mayor Weiss's question, that bill has a lot of what we would call human infrastructure provisions, if you will. So those issues related around housing. So we'll continue to track that larger budget bill and the provisions therein and see what impacts it will have on issues like housing and homelessness and others. The next slide, please. So today, again, I'm talking more about the traditional infrastructure bill, if you will. This is $1.2 trillion as proposed with $550 billion above normal annual spending. So we're seeing projected $274 billion to the U.S. Department of Transportation. And you can see as it relates to other agencies within the federal government on the slide. Next slide, please. So focusing on the US DOT, the reauthorization piece represents $294 billion over 5 years of Highway Trust Fund. So this is plus $274 billion or so in extra Highway Trust Fund funding and one-time appropriations. So again, this is more of that combination of surface transportation reauthorization, which is typically a 5-year measure. This is that 5 years plus in addition to that. Next slide, please. Looking more specifically at the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, for Federal Highway, we're seeing $116 billion infrastructure bill increase. That's 49% above baseline. And for Federal Transit Administration, proposed $42 billion increase, which is 65% above baseline. So significant and unprecedented amounts of funding being proposed here. Just to note some other provisions, the Federal Rail Administration, as proposed, would see $66 billion. This is 11 times higher than last year and equivalent to the last 18 years of funding. Part of that $66 billion would be $12 billion in intercity service. I'm sure you've seen in the media, and I know some of the member agencies have had involvement around support for bringing intercity rail from Tucson to the Phoenix region via Amtrak. One might think that if that were to go forward, that would be some of the funding that would be sought to make that happen. Another note as well regarding discretionary grants, both formula and competitive for transit, we're seeing $8 billion for capital investment grants. Electric vehicle charging, we're seeing $5 billion as proposed, and the infra grant, of which a number of member agencies apply, is seeing $3.2 billion. Next slide, please. So a question we've received from member agencies is the readiness of the region to draw down and spend new funding. We've put together this 2-pager, if you will, the MAG Transportation Investment Plan. This slide deck is available. If you click on the MAG Regional Council meeting today, you can find this slide calling attention to that second page in response to the question about readiness, especially that dark blue box. We have yet to receive the draft tables for sub-allocations to the state and region in terms of what's being proposed. But yes, the MAG investment plan shows significant need in our fast-growing region. Some of those projects outlined there include traffic interchanges along I-10, particularly across the Gila River Indian community, freeway widening projects, high-capacity transit projects, including I-10 West Light Rail extension, Rio Salado East Dobson streetcar extension. Obviously, a lot of need in our fast-growing region. Every dollar that comes into projects that are ready to go is an opportunity to place another dollar into projects that are in the queue. Next slide, please. I'm going to conclude my presentation with a little bit unfortunate news. We've been reporting on the fast-growing state issue. So recall that the federal funding formulas, the methodology therein, uses some factors that are tied to 2000 data information, such as census and related to our roads. We've been working on this for a number of years, and thank you for your support in this effort. We were feeling pretty good. We had a provision run last year by Congressman Stanton on this issue to create a study committee to review the methodology. He ran that legislation this year. Similarly, Senator Kelly ran a companion bill as well. On the Senate side, we saw co-sponsors from Senators Burr of North Carolina, Cortez Masto of Nevada, Cruz of Texas, and Hickenlooper of Colorado. Unfortunately, if you were tracking the Senate infrastructure bill, there was a lot of procedural moves in the last 48 hours or so. And unfortunately, that provision did not make it in the Senate bill. We had a briefing yesterday with Congressman Stanton's office on the status of the companion House side. Unfortunately, with a narrow margin of votes in the procedures that I mentioned earlier, it looks like the House is going to take the Senate bill largely as is, meaning very, very limited amendments, if any at all. So that's unfortunate. We will continue to call attention to this issue. We've had a lot of support from our peers in the Intermountain West, as well as in outreach to folks in Texas and Florida as well. So we've called a lot of attention to this issue. So we will regroup and retool and look forward to take another run at this in future congressional sessions or as opportunities arise. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Nathan. Are there any questions from the membership?
Chair Giles, this is Jen Daniels, and I do have one question, and that is, can we access or get a PDF version of that 2-pager that you had for the Momentum program? That was a great outline, and I think something that could be really useful.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Daniels will be sure to circulate that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Council, any additional questions? All right, again, this item is on the agenda for information and discussion only. Moving on, the last agenda item we have is a request by the Regional Council for items on a future agenda. Do we have any requests? Okay, are there any comments or announcements from the membership?
My apologies, Chair Giles. I was too slow on the unmute button for future items.
Yes, please.
Eric Anderson, I was hoping that we might be able to get the update on the diamond grinding pilot as it relates to ADOT moving forward.
Yes, I think we have that scheduled for an upcoming agenda.
Next month, September, or?
I believe September. I'm going to have to check with John. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jen. Council, any other questions or requests for future agenda items? Hearing none, that concludes everything on our agenda. So this meeting is adjourned. Have a great day.